Hello, and today I'll show you how to use the AI Denoiser inside Houdini. So I have just a simple scene here where I created a fog box just to get, so you know that volumes tend to leave a lot of noise behind. So for that reason I created a karma fog box, and also inside the principal shader of my shader ball I enabled subsurface scattering, by the way the full subsurface scattering, so it will also leave quite a bit of noise behind. So what I've done here is that I'll be rendering it at 4K. So generally speaking, if you're rendering, for example, at full HD, like this, and let's say you're going to be rendering your final result in 32 primary samples, it's a good idea to multiply your final render resolution and divide it by 4. So you'll divide your primary samples by 4. So this will ensure that the render time will be the exact same, because you're essentially quadrupling the overall amount of pixels you have, but you're also dividing by 4 all the primary samples. So the render engine will at the end send a very similar amount of samples, thus a very similar render time. So I'll do that, and the result will be that I'll get a very noisy render. But what the AI denoiser will tend to do is it will essentially blur out the detail, or if you have sharp edges and you want to retain more of those sharp edges, this method will be much more efficient than using a full HD with more samples. So I'll render this to disk, and I'll see you when that's finished, and I'll see you in the CopNetwork. So I'm back, the image is rendered, and we have two different options to go. So we can use the CopNetwork, which is going to be, or which is a new type of network that has been added, I think, in Houdini 20.5. And we can use the denoise AI here, and I'll import my file here. So this is my image here. I can visualize it here. We can see that we have quite some noise in here. And what we'll need here is, if I plug this into the denoiser, it complains because this requires a RGB and this is RGBA. But first, what I should do is add AOVs. So we have all the AOVs here. You can see, like the combined volume and so on. So what I'll do is RGB to RGBA. My bad. RGBA to RGB, like that. Now we can separate the alpha, and now the denoiser should work. Like that, you can see it denoised quite nicely. But what is a good idea to do also, take the albedo, plug the albedo, to albedo, and take the normal. This will retain more of the shape and detail. And now I would like to talk about the settings here. So if you're using a NVIDIA graphics card, you should also have, or you can choose from NVIDIA OptiX here. Since I'm using a Radeon GPU, I only have the Intel Denoiser here. And if you're also using the NVIDIA OptiX, you can also use the motion vectors if you have a animation, and also the previous frame. It is very useful for the NVIDIA OptiX to get a better result. Then auxiliary planes are clean, so the auxiliary planes are these ones here. And what this means is that you're telling the denoiser that the auxiliary planes are already clean, so they're already denoised. In our case, if we look at the, for example, normals, I think the albedo will be better. We can see a little bit that we have still noise here, even though, so I shouldn't set up here that auxiliary planes are clean because they're not actually clean. But what I could do is pre-filter auxiliary planes, which will essentially denoise them before using them as, or for denoising. So if you have noised up auxiliary planes, enable this, it will lead to a better result. But I have one issue with this one, is that it only works on a single layer in this case. And realistically, if you wanted to, for example, let me copy this. If I wanted to, let's say, denoise the combined volume, as you can see, I would need to, instead of using the source as our RGB or our C, our beauty, I would need to use the combined volume here. So in theory, I would need to do this process for each plane I'm trying to denoise. And a lot of the times in compositing, you tend to rebuild your beauty plane from all the additional render planes you rendered, like diffuse and so on. So this is one of the disadvantage of this new COP network. I'm not sure how you're supposed to use it, because you can't even use like for each loops or anything like here, so you can't do it more procedural. You would need to manually do it for each plane you have rendered. But there's a old network where I tend to use this one more. But the problem with is this one is going to be removed in future. So denoise AI, I can import file like so. And if I plug this in, it already expects that my normal plane is called normal, and then it expects that the albedo is called albedo. Those two settings are the same as on the other denoiser, and we can set this to pre-filter auxiliary planes. I'll denoise it, and again, you'll have the same two options if you're using the NVIDIA graphics card. Right now, it didn't actually denoise our, for example, combined volume, as you can see, but we can set this to all planes, and now, of course, it will take longer, but it will denoise all the planes inside our render. So I like this option more. It's much more simple, much more quick. I'm not sure how you're supposed to use it here. But yeah, those are the two options. And I hope you've learned something new, and I'll see you again. Bye!